Let's jump in. I'm going to begin by sharing my presentation I have for today. So folks, I also work as an adjunct faculty at IIT Palakkad. I came back to India last year, May of 2022. And since then, I've been trying to work with students to upskill and also work with placement officers to help them do a better job. Okay, so I'm actually teaching a course on getting ready for placements and trying to post that on the NPTEL platform so that all our students can also access it whenever required. So I'll be teaching a course within IIT Palakkad next semester. I also have a YouTube channel called Career Bold. If you guys have heard of it, that's great. If not, I would love for you to check up some of the stuff I've posted there. It's always about how do you get ready for internship search? How do you get ready for jobs? Those are the two topics I always discuss. So today, this is what we're going to discuss, right? We're going to spend around half an hour talking about some of these things and then come back to you, ask you questions. By the way, if you have burning questions, feel free to stop me. Ask me a question right away, okay? So do not keep it till the end, but we'll definitely open up time in the end for Q&A. So we'll talk about some of the things you have to do in advance of doing your internship search and the actual job search process. How does it work? How can you create a good resume? How to create a fantastic resume? And how do you handle failure in the interview process? So these are some of the topics we'll be touching on. So most of you students are pretty much in your third year, beginning your third year. You will soon face the nightmare of both the internship search process and the full-time recruiting process. It's totally not easy. You will actually see a lot of craziness happen. Like, for example, day one, you'll have a lot of companies coming to campus. It's a craze to get into these companies. So it's very difficult not to get sucked into the peer pressure. All of your friends are getting placed, so what's happening to me? Where should I get placed? What is the compensation? I think a lot of you are going to ask those sort of questions. We'll talk about a framework to analyze some of these topics, but it's very important to understand that the actual job search doesn't begin the day the companies come for recruiting. It happens much earlier. So you have to pretty much begin preparing for internship and job search, maybe in your second year, but you have to begin in your third year. If you do not begin in your third year, there's a very low chance that you will actually get into your dream companies. So for example, if some folks among you say that I absolutely want to get into a company like Texas Instruments or a company like Goldman Sachs or a company like McKinsey, you have to prep in advance. And we talked a little bit about some of the topics yesterday about how to prepare for case interviews, how to prepare for star interviews. All these things have been done months in advance of the actual internship search or job search process. Do not begin just like a couple of days earlier, okay? So let me go to this topic. I think this is maybe one very common question I get. I've talked to maybe around 2,000 to 3,000 of the students across India have gone to their campuses. Probably this is one of the biggest questions I get. So what's the difference between a LinkedIn profile and what you write on your resume? Students, your thoughts. I would love to hear from you first before I give an answer. Folks, come on, take a shot.
LinkedIn is where we put on some interesting things of us.
Okay. And resume?
Like we have to fill up the pages.
Okay, fine. Any other thoughts? Rohan, do you have any thoughts?
No, sir.
Okay, so I'll give you the quick answer, right? In terms of a resume typically has to be a one-page resume as much as possible. Try not to make it a two-page resume. So the number one feedback, for example, when I did my workshop at different IITs, like a month back, I was at IIT Roorkee, and a year back, I was in IIT Madras. The feedback I always was giving students is resume cannot be more than one page. The only exception to the rule is if you have maybe more than 10 years of work experience, yeah, maybe you can have two-page resumes. But for a job search resume, it's one page. So this is all expected from you. But the question you're going to ask is, I've done a lot more. Where do I put that information? So what I highly recommend is if all the things you've done in your life, all the great achievements you have, put that on your LinkedIn page. I hope all of you have a LinkedIn page, right? If not, please go forward and create a LinkedIn page as fast as possible. Customize your URL. There's an option for you to customize it. Do the customization and make sure that you put all the stuff you've done on your LinkedIn profile. Most recruiters, when they look at your resume page, they look for your LinkedIn profile right at the top. And once they find the LinkedIn profile, they click and go through it in a lot of detail. It's very common nowadays. And your resume has to be focused specifically on the company in terms of what are the job skills they require and what job skills do you have and how close a match is your job skill for the skills the company is looking for. So the job skill is basically the only thing you have to put on your resume. Everything else goes to your LinkedIn profile. So I think Himanshi asked this question earlier, or one of you asked a question around what do you gain by looking at some of the skills? And there's something called the skill mapping exercise which you should be doing, and I'm going to talk about how you can get it done. So let's take an example. Let's take like a person like Yashwant or Himanshi. Let's take Yashwant and say that Yashwant says that I'm targeting maybe 10 companies that I absolutely want to get in once I finish my undergrad. And how do I prep for these companies? So that's a question I get from Yashwant. So what I'm going to recommend to Yashwant is, if you have 10 companies in mind, make sure that you customize your resume for each one of these 10 companies. So do not ever make the mistake of having one resume in terms of what you have done and sending it to all the companies which come to campus. That's a guarantee that you will not get into any company. What you have to instead do is look at the job description of these companies, identify the skills, and customize your resume for each company. A resume customized for one company can never be used for another company because it's pretty useless. And you will soon know the reason why. The job skills one company wants will not be the same as the job skills the other company wants. So an important way for you to look at the job search process is customize your resume for each company. Never use one resume to apply to all companies. It will only fail. And when I say all companies, I'm talking about different sectors like consulting, finance, tech jobs, CS jobs, data analytics. Obviously, you cannot use the same resume. And even, for example, if you're applying for computer science jobs, what Goldman Sachs looks for will be very different from what a company like Jane Street will look for. It'll be very different from what a company like Infosys will look for. So again, there's a difference between what each company wants. So maybe one homework you folks can do as you leave today's conversation is identify the top 10 companies you really want to apply for. So maybe in this case, Yashwant can choose the top 10 companies he wants to be in. It can be consulting, it can be finance, it can be data analytics company, whatever Yashwant wants to get in. I'm going to repeat what I talked about from yesterday. Go to the careers section of each company. Search for the job role you're applying for. There's always a search button out there under the careers page. Search for the job posting. For example, Yashwant is going to probably look for a software engineer at Goldman Sachs. Search for software engineer. Look at what you find. You get a bunch of results. That result is called a job description. Download the job description, and under each job description, there is going to be something called skills. We'll talk about what that means, but this is the most important part of the actual job search process, is identifying the skills as required by the company. We'll come back to skills. Yeah, sorry. Questions?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So for us, it's not that we are applying to the company by our own. It's like there is a portal, there is a CDC portal, and
Yes.
we can upload a common resume, and with that resume only we can apply to different company which are open to our campus.
Yes.
Like there is 3 options for resume, so we can have only three resume, and then by
Yes.
using these 3 resume we can apply to all the companies. Like we
Okay.
cannot change resume or skills.
Okay.
The resume has been prepared much before the company has
Agreed.
came.
Himanshi, great point. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is what companies are looking for, but there's limited flexibility. That's what you're telling me. So what I'm telling you is not just about your campus selection process, right? I'm also giving you the big picture overview. If, for example, if you decide to search for jobs outside the campus recruitment process, maybe you're reaching out to companies by yourself, or if you finish graduation and you, for example, are looking for jobs on your own, right? Maybe after your first job or your second job after you graduate, what do companies look for? If there are companies not coming for internship in your campus, how do you reach out to them? So I think this is where we'll talk about what matters in a resume. And also, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say is that you have limited flexibility. And let's maybe talk a little bit about what you can do to get over the problem. And that is, you have to customize your resume for the company. At the same time, you only have limited flexibility. So we'll come back to how to resolve the problem. Okay. So just park it for the time being. I'll come back to this and answer this question. Okay. But I want you to get a general sense of what companies want, and we'll customize it later. we'll get into a lot of detail around what each company is looking for, but let's also look at the big picture in terms of what you gain by doing a skill mapping exercise. So the first thing you'll understand is, if you can list down the skills as required in the company, then the most important thing to ask yourself is, am I a fit for the company? So you don't need to wait till the company comes to your campus and then ask, will I get into that company? For example, if Himanshi says that I want to get into Texas Instruments, right? You don't need to wait till Texas Instrument comes to campus and then ask, okay, will I get in, not getting, apply and see. If they reject you, then you're like, okay, I didn't get in, right? You don't need to wait for that time. What you can do in advance is, if you follow what I said earlier, download the job description of, for example, engineer, semiconductor engineer at Texas Instruments. Under each job description, there'll be something called technical skills, there'll be something called people skills. List down all the technical skills, list down all the people skills. And there's this column I created. So there's a section called desired skills. So try to identify what level of expertise does the company want. Now, a level of expertise can be something like basic, intermediate, or advanced. Most companies are not looking for advanced skill set unless you have maybe a PhD degree. They're probably looking for either basic or intermediate. So you have to identify what is the skill set they're looking for, and also ask yourself, what skill set do I have? So this is called a skill mapping exercise. And again, it's not just for your first job search when you're doing an MS, MBA, full-time job search in the future. You have to do these things to understand how close a match are you for the company. So I guess one question you'll ask is, how do I identify the desired skill for the companies I want to get in, because I have no idea what the company wants? What I highly recommend is, you can do two things. One is that reach out to your friends or seniors working in these companies and have a conversation with them well in advance. Ask them, okay, what are some of these skills the company is looking for? What is the level of proficiency they want? So that way you can get a good sense of, is it a basic, intermediate, or advanced skill the company wants? The other way you can do it is reach out to professors working in your company. Many of them tend to have work experience, or some of them also work very closely with the industry. They can also help you understand what sort of skill the company wants. The third thing you can do is, if you don't have any contacts, you don't have any professors who know about these companies, use LinkedIn, reach out to people randomly in terms of people who are in high positions working in companies, and say, hey, can I have a conversation with you? Most people will not agree, but whoever agrees, go forward, have the conversation, ask them the same questions. What level of expertise do they want? Once you identify desired skills, and once you ask yourself what current skill you have, then the next plan of action is, how do you go from, for example, the technical skills, how do you go from basic to intermediate? How do you improve your knowledge? And the way you can do it is a bunch of things. One is that you can read books. That's a great way to do it. You can take courses within your college, within the, maybe you can take a course on the NPTEL platform, an IIT course, or you can work with your professors in terms of a certain course. You can work on projects. You can work on internships. There's a bunch of ways by which you can enhance the skills. When it comes to people skills, maybe you can talk about your volunteer experience. Maybe some volunteer experience can get you the skill sets, maybe like a leadership work experience. You can talk about some positions of responsibilities. So there are multiple ways by which you can gain the skills, but you have to plan for it. None of these things will happen in a vacuum. You have to prepare for it in advance. Again, I'm repeating what I said. You can take courses, you can do internships, you can do projects. Remember that when you do projects, it's not just for the sake of saying that I have done a project. Choose difficult projects. Don't take easy projects. Likewise, when you're doing a BTech project or your MTech project, make sure that you do difficult projects. And the reason why I'm saying difficult projects is because you want to gain the technical skills which the company is looking for. If you take an easy project, you probably are not going to learn much. But then if you take a difficult course, maybe your grades will be lower, but you will learn a lot more. So you have to choose what is it you want to optimize. Be realistic. There are things you can achieve very quickly, maybe within 6 months, within 1 year. Maybe there are some things which take 2 to 3 years. So just be planful about what you can do or not do in the next 1 year, next 2 years, and so on. Okay. So these are things which will help you in the job search process. Okay. I've given you a lot of talk about what skill mapping means, but let's do a real-time exercise, right? So a couple of students asked me this question, okay, if I want to apply for Deloitte, what are the skills that Deloitte looks for? So what I did personally is I went to Deloitte, I went to the careers website, I pulled up this job description. And I begin to highlight some of the skills which I think is important. And you can see the way they phrased it, like if you look at a couple of job descriptions, you will get an automatic sense of what are the skills they want. In some places, the company will say explicitly it's problem-solving skills. This means that it is a skill they want. Sometimes they talk about working in a fast-paced environment. They sometimes talk about defining, analyzing, and managing requirements. Strong analytical and critical thinking skills. They already use the word skills. So you know that's a skill the company wants. So going back to what some of you mentioned to me earlier, the two reasons why identifying skills is going to be important. The first thing is that you want to use the same words as it is defined as skills on your resume. So when you write your resume, for example, let's say Yashwant is trying for Deloitte, he wants to get into Deloitte and the consulting team. He has to use words like problem solving, analytical skills, critical thinking skills on his resume. So this is an easy way for your resume to be spotted by a consulting company. Likewise, the second piece is that when you face an interview, for example, if Yashwant faces an interview at Deloitte, you can expect to get one question on, give me an example of a time in the past. The standard stereotypical star-related questions, which always begin with, give me an example of a time in the past when you had to show XYZ skill. So give me an example of a time in the past when you had to work in a fast-paced environment. Give me an example of a time in the past when you had to work in a collaborative culture. So why did they ask collaborative culture? Because that is what one of the skill this is. That is what they're looking for. Give me an example of a time you had to solve a problem. What are they looking for? They're looking for this problem-solving skills. Give me an example of a time in the past when you had to show outside the box thinking. Why are they asking the question? Because that's defined in the job description. So quickly you can see that you can predict a lot of questions by looking at the job description. And since I worked as HR business partner, when actual interview calibrations happen, when all the interviewers get together to discuss candidates, the HR person is always part of the conversation. We always ask the managers to basically evaluate the student using the same question. So one question like, how did you evaluate the person in terms of outside the box thinking? Then we'll collect feedback from everyone and see how good the person is, right? So this is a way to bring all the team together, the interviewing team together in terms of a common criteria, and then deciding whether the student is a good fit or not. So likewise, I would say that look at Deloitte, you can identify a bunch of skills. Just maybe go forward and look at a company like McKinsey. So I went to the McKinsey careers website, looked at business analysts. So I think there are a bunch of students from IIT Madras and IIT Kharagpur here. So you guys may actually find this super interesting, right? So when you look at McKinsey, you sense that there are a couple of skills, again, they're looking for. They're looking for skills around solving ambiguous problems. They're looking for skills around synthesizing complex information into clear takeaways, working effectively with diverse teams, communicating effectively with audiences, capability to drive independent work streams, ability to break down and solve problems. So a lot of the questions you face in McKinsey, by the way, I've been through the interview process at McKinsey myself, and these are exactly the questions they ask you. So when they're asking you case-related questions, they're actually trying to not just understand whether you get to the answer, they're also trying to understand your way of thinking. They're trying to check, do you have the ability to break down a complex problem into smaller pieces? And when you answer, they're always evaluating you on the basis of these skills. They're trying to understand, can you break down complex information into clear takeaways? Can you come up with good recommendations? Can you work effectively with diverse teams? This skill is not easy to judge by using case interviews. So they will probably ask you a star interview saying, hey, a partner will call you and say, give me an example of a time when you had to work with diverse teams. How did you go around working with them? And what is the purpose of that question? Because they want to check how good are you with respect to this specific job skill. So again, you can see that anything you face in the interview process is linked to the fact that it's part of the job description and they're trying to evaluate you on the basis of the job description. So when you're creating a resume for McKinsey, you basically want to hit on all these topics, right? So it has to be customized for these topics. Like if you have to talk about how, never use the word we on your resume, try to use the word I on your resume. When you're giving your interviews, again, do not use the word we, use the word I, because everyone wants to see how did you independently drive work streams. They don't want to understand what did you do as a team. They want to understand what did you do independently. But there are also places where they want you to work as a team. So again, based on what the company is looking for, you have to customize your answer. Let me pause here. Any questions so far based on what I'm talking about? So let's maybe go back to the question. I think Himanshi asked me this question around, someone else asked me the question around, okay, you cannot create 10 to 20 different resumes. You only have maybe 3 resumes you can put up on your campus website, right? Campus placement website. So what do you do? So what I would recommend personally is that identify which companies you absolutely want to work in. So do your homework, look at maybe the top 10 companies you're interested in, and see which category do they fall under, which sector do they fall under. For assuming, like, for example, there are 10 companies, 3 of them fall into consulting, 3 of them fall into data analytics, 3 of them fall into software and coding. What I then recommend is you go to all the companies you're interested in, right? And look at the job descriptions and try to list down all the skills together. Combine all the skills together into one single place. Look for what are the common themes the company wants. And whatever is common theme, identify those common themes and make sure that the common themes get reflected back on your resume. So you basically end up creating one resume for consulting, one resume for data analytics, and one resume for software engineering or software development. But at the same time, you're customizing your resume for what the company wants. So if you're talking about, say, software engineering, right? There are a lot of different directions you can get into. Being a full stack engineer, you can get into being a back-end engineer. You may want to work in AI, ML. So again, ask yourself, where is your interest? Forget what company is coming to campus. Ask yourself, where is your interest? And one of the ways by which you can judge your interest is that skill mapping exercise we talked about earlier. Do the skill mapping and ask yourself, am I a good fit for the AI, ML companies? If you're finding that you're not a good fit, maybe you're going to be a good fit for being a back-end engineer or a full stack engineer, right? So once there's a good match between your skills and what the company wants, target those jobs. Focus on those jobs and make sure that the expectations of that company is listed on your resume. So by doing this work, you'll basically come to like 3 standard resumes where you've looked at maybe 10 to 20 companies, identified the skills, and incorporated that as part of your resume. And I feel that if you do this homework, you stand a much better chance of getting through each company. Ideally, you will have to customize for each company, but maybe that's not possible sometimes. In that case, at least customize it for the sector, if not for the company. Does it answer your question? In terms of how to customize your resumes, is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.